Right, today's vlog is in regards to myths about Muslims living in Europe, basically. There are many sort of silly little stories out there that say Muslims are here to take over. We're going to overpopulate the Western world. We're going to bring our culture along and destroy Western culture. It's a load of rubbish. It really is. I mean, it's just scaremongering. It's mostly by the right wing and by the press to cause hatred and division amongst the population.
Hey mate, ain't that the Quran?
Yeah, it's the Quran.
It's for one of the Muslims, isn't it?
Okay, I'm one of those Muslims.
Man, you guys are so angry.
One of the major ones that you hear is that Muslims will become the majority in European countries. Okay, according to some large-scale projections done by some think tanks, proper ones, not Mickey Mouse ones, they say by the end of this century, by the middle of this century, the Muslim population in Europe will only be 10%. Only 10%. At the moment it's 7%. And it's only going to be 10%. So then those people are going around saying that Muslims are going to overpopulate Europe. 10% is what? That's nothing. 10% in the middle of this century. Most would be dead by then. Most of us would be dead by then. So that's one myth dissolved. Another myth is immigrants from Muslim countries are going to swamp Europe. Okay, like the one I just mentioned before, this is a load of rubbish because they say the fertility rate is quite high amongst Muslim families and blah 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 blah. Load of codswallop. The average fertility rate now, if you look in countries like Turkey, the UAE, all these Middle Eastern countries, it's like 2 kids per family now. They're sort of cut down. 20 years ago it was 5 kids per family. Now it's gone down to like 2.7 in Turkey, 1.9 in the UAE and other countries like that as well. So the fertility rate is slowing down. So for us to be swamping, we need at least have 20 kids per family. But it's a load of rubbish. The family size of Muslim immigrant groups, okay, in Germany is 2.2. Also in France it's 2.2. Pakistani British immigrants was 3.5. Now with their offspring it's 2.5. You can see it's dropping every generation. So the average is going to be like 2 kids per family. We're not going to become the majority and we're not going to swamp Europe. That's a myth. That's 2 myths busted. Another myth is that Muslim immigrants bring their backward culture with them into Europe. Backward culture. Anyway, basically that's what the right wing say, okay? Load of rubbish. In fact, Muslims change their cultural views as soon as they emigrate. They adapt to the ways of the West. I mean, for example, 39% of American Muslims say that they tolerate homosexuality, for example. And 47% of German Muslims say the same thing, that they tolerate homosexuality. So you can see a shift, you can see a change in attitudes already towards homosexuality. For example, one of the most important facts is that Muslim immigrants are converging with Western values very quickly. Poor Muslims are flooding out of their own overpopulated countries and coming to Europe. This is absolute rubbish. When in fact, the most overpopulated Muslim countries are producing the least immigration. The least immigration. And Muslims are far from the largest immigrant group. Okay, that's another fact. We're not the largest immigrant group. In the UK alone, 28% of the immigrants are Muslim. 28% only. The rest are from other countries. And those numbers are not going to increase any day soon. Another myth is Muslim immigrants are angry at the society around them. What a lot of, you know what? The right wing, you do my head in. Seriously, I don't know where you get information from. It's just so much rubbish out there and you believe it. Muslim immigrants appear to be more satisfied with the world around them and its secular institutions and general population. For example, in a recent survey, 83% of British Muslims said they were proud to be British. 83%. Forget the 17%. Think about the 83%. That's a huge number of Muslims. You're talking millions. There's only 3 million Muslims in the UK, but you can imagine 83% of that? Do the maths. And that's versus 79% of Britons in general. So 83% of Muslims say they're proud to be British, 79% of Britons say they are proud to be British, non-Muslims. And the last myth, which I'm going to mention now. Muslims in the West cheer for violence. Yeah, come on! Absolute rubbish. You see all these videos coming on Sky News and you see all these little clips, like you see Muslims cheering when things happen, when terrorist attacks happen. That's the media telling you a load of rubbish. I'm telling you now, it's a load of rubbish. There was a large-scale survey done about attacks on civilians, what people thought, if they were justified. Now, these are the stats. 1% of French people said yes. 1% of German people said yes. These are just non-Muslims here. And 3% of the British public said yes. Okay, these are large-scale. This is large-scale research that's been done. Okay, amongst Muslims in those countries, in France, 2% said yes, it's justified. 0.5% in Germany said it's justified, and 2% in UK says it's justified. That's just a small amount of numbers of Muslims there. In France, you've got 5 million Muslims, probably a little bit more. So you're talking about 2% of that. Do the maths. Germany, you've got a few million Muslims there, more than Britain. 0.5% says justified. And in the UK, you've got 2% of Muslims saying, yeah, these attacks are justified. Out of 3 million Muslims. Do the maths. It's not many. That's not many. They say it's justified. I'm not saying they're going to carry out these attacks, but they're saying justification for them. Another survey that was carried out asked, is it justifiable to use violence for a noble cause? Same people asked again. 7% of the French agreed, along with 8% of French Muslims who agreed. 10% of the German public agreed, while 2% of German Muslims agreed. While in Britain, 10% of the British public agreed and only 8% of the British Muslims agreed. So you can see the maths here, you can see what's going on here. So the vast majority of Muslims love living in the West. They love being here. As you can see, some of the myths I've just mentioned, it's all a load of rubbish. They're called myths. It's not fact. So please, when you see these things in a newspaper or when you go into these right-wing websites, I'm not going to mention any names about which ones I'm talking about, but you know which ones I'm on about. If you click on it and they'll send some page and it comes out with all this kind of rubbish about Muslims trying to overpopulate Europe, trying to bring their culture into Europe, trying to, bring a different culture in, or they're not happy with living in the West, and etc, etc. Don't believe it. It's a load of rubbish. I'm telling you now, as a Muslim that lives here, I was born here, and the vast majority of us, you might get a small number saying, oh no, we don't like it. Well, they don't know where they can go. At the end of the day, it's a load of coswallop. We love being here. Don't believe the hype. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next week.